All right, folks, welcome back to Blockbuster Brothers. Today we are going to be talking about episode 2 of The Last of Us season 2. Brian, I got a few questions for you, okay? How many years are there in a decade?
10.
Correct. What comes after 9?
10.
Correct. And what was the average math test score that I received senior year in high school?
I think when you really studied, you got like a 10% out of 100.
That is correct, unfortunately. And let me tell you, that is the number that I give this episode. An absolute banger of an episode, front to back. I was thoroughly pleased. What did you think?
Wait, you gave it a 10 out of 100?
10 out of 10. I'm sorry. I
Oh,
want to be
10 out
very,
of
yeah.
10. 10
Oh,
out of
geez.
10.
Correct. 10 out of 10.
So I think I was, obviously, and I don't know why I was caught off guard about it happening, the moment that we've all been waiting for. And I think the moment that's been held over everybody's head of a spoiler. If you haven't watched the episode, please go watch it now. Again, as we just said, it's a great episode. You definitely want to watch it. But everyone's been waiting for Joel's death. And it finally comes, which makes sense. In the video games, Joel does die early on in the story. But I thought just the brutality of with the golf clubs and how they do it, it was really high tension and really well done. I will say, though, it is going to be interesting how the season fares without Pedro Pascal and the rest of it. Having somebody of his caliber part of the set and to work off of, I'm going to be really interested to see how Abby and Ellie and the story in general do without their biggest star. But in particular, I thought that fence scene where the fence falls on Abby and she's crawling out is just really high tension. And I was really just hooked. Again, we're going to have to follow. This is the classic story of revenge and passing the buck on. So from here on out, I think it's going to be Ellie tracking down Abby. I mean, I do know because that is what happens in the story in the video game, but we'll see how they deviate or not.
Yeah. And, this episode really reminded me of the Game of Thrones episode where the whole episode they focus on the storming of the castle. And about 50% of this episode was storming of the fortress. And man, when they did that overhead drone shot of this like hive of the infected growing and coming alive, and then the chase away, the chase to the storming of the fortress, and then just that whole extended sequence was so darn good. And I was just really enthralled by it. I was a little bit underwhelmed at the first episode of the season. Not too much maybe going on. And then they just hit you with an absolute banger. So I was really thrilled. Gonna miss Pedro Pascal's hair. We talked about that before. That's 5%, maybe 10% of the show for me. We'll see where the show goes from here. But I also thought a pretty cool part of this episode was they just very casually brought in this mega infected guy out of nowhere, kind of like the Game of Thrones episode where all of a sudden they got this big giant and you're like, oh man, this is a whole big problem within a bigger problem. And just kind of like the fence scene, the layers of tension, things looking bleak and then building a more bleak, more trouble, more potential consequences for the people at behind this fortress. And then it was rough. It wasn't easy to watch Pedro get killed. That was rough.
Yeah, really rough to see, especially having to progressively work that out with just hearing it happen as Ellie enters was just like, again, it's putting you as close to the characters in terms of like the audience feeling what the characters are feeling. And it made you feel. But the more I think about it, the more I worry about this show without Pedro, to be honest. I think that there's a certain weight that he brings to every scene, and him not being there is there's gonna be a void. I think I'm not counting this show out by any means, but I'm gonna be real interested to see how the rest of The Last of Us is when we've seen the last of Pedro. But that's not The Last of Us. We'll see y'all next time on the Blockbuster Boys. And leave your comment, like, subscribe. We appreciate you all. See you next time.